everybody would just stand in the same position every time on tour, I could probably figure it out. But you know, Robert E. Lee in the post-war years, he could remember all of his students' names, like 150, 200 students' names. He could remember everybody, and he'd call them by first name. Right there. I don't have that ability. Flagpole Bob. I mean, I know a few people. I know somebody else too. There was he disappeared on me, but I had the drunken intern out here. Well, there he is, right there. Everybody can turn. 15 minutes too late to the desk last week because he wanted to do handstands. Apparently the night before at the seasonal housing. Right over there. You check his ID. It used to be a rite of passage, you know, you could drink underage. You know, when I was, it'd be horrified, but we get our license at that time at 15 in Mississippi. My cousin, I was 14, my cousins were 16. We go over to the liquor store in Oklahoma and stand out, because my town was dry, still is dry. Y'all know what dry is? Yeah. And we go over there and like stand outside the liquor store, wait on some dude to come outside. Felt sorry for us. We get him some money, you know. He'd go back in there and get us a bottle of Ripple. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Boone's Farm. I know I was outraged when it went up to from 75 cents to $1.25. It made me very angry.
Well, you got over it.
Now there was a grocery store, not the liquor store, but there was a grocery store on the other side of town. They had a liquor store on all four corners of the town. And one in the middle of the neighborhood where you could, like, people that were drunks that didn't want anybody to know they were drunk. You never put a liquor store on the main drag. People don't want to be seen going to liquor store. So, marketing strategy if you ever want to own a liquor store. So, this guy, the owner of the grocery, owned the liquor store too that was beside it, but he obviously didn't want to get involved. But he had a butcher in the back of the grocery store that would work Saturday nights, and you could go up there if you give him a little extra change. You can go around the back.
Good job.
Y'all don't have any stories like that? That's like, well, y'all never do that?
Not in the north, Matt. Not in the north. We're civilized.
Civilized.
we steal our liquor from our daddy's cabin.
Yeah. My dad.
Replace it with water.
My dad didn't have any. We were cold water Presbyterian. Yeah. My house. My mother was, and my father followed. Yep. All right, so what we're going to do today is Stewart's Brigade, and we're going to start out all right. We're going to start out right here. Rarely see you two together. We're going to start out right here, and we're going to actually go. I parked everybody here because we've got more space, and I thought logistically speaking that it would be a whole lot easier for y'all to get here from the visitor center, where most of you are probably picking up the information, to this spot than having you try to find the entrance to East Confederate Avenue, which probably half of you have never driven down before. So that would be a nightmare within itself. So this is not the beginning of the tour, it's actually the end of the tour. But it is a nice perspective to kind of get another view, because I won't be coming back here. We're going to finish the tour up there on the other side of the saddle. But basically, if you look at here, if you look at these woods, if you keep this in mind, I'll tell the story as we go along. But this is going to be your July 3rd front. In other words, the Confederates for July 2nd and 3rd, there's another perspective, are going to be up here on this knoll. All right, and Stewart's Brigade, which we're going to concentrate on, are a little bit more up toward the woods, okay? But more about that later. You got the Stonewall Brigade, all that stuff in here. On July 3rd, the Confederates are going to swing from facing basically in an arc. They're going to swing out like a door, like this, at right angles, and that's what those woods are. I wish we could get in there and burn it off or do something with it, clear it out a little bit. But that's what they align upon. You can't see it very well, but that's a small ridge that runs at right angles to this position. And they attack this way. The thing I can't figure out about it is the Yankees. I'll talk more about this over here. The Yankees are in these woods and basically surround this knoll right here, and I don't know how the Confederates attacked that way with those Yankees shooting this way. That had to be a tricky proposition. Maybe the Union boys never saw them. I don't know. One of those things. But they had learned their lesson, you know, between the 2nd Massachusetts and the 27th Indiana. You know that story over here behind you. So I doubt they were going to come out of the woods either way, which may have led into Stewart feeling so bold. Okay, so have I thoroughly confused you yet? Okay. I'd like to say that I don't have my phone on me. It doesn't work anyway, apparently. All right, so any questions, concerns, last request? I hope everybody, if you didn't, there's somebody on this tour, probably multiple people that have bug spray on you. I'm going to take you right up through the woods, okay? And this is going to be bug heaven where we're headed today. I thought, though, we'll see how it is. I doubt it's really going to be that bad because the tree cover, I don't think we're going to run into that thick of grass or vines or whatever else. But nevertheless, there's going to be a lot of ticks in there. And my worst nightmare, and that's the biggest, if you call it my job being dangerous, that's the biggest danger in my job is getting one of these tick bites. And I don't usually put on bug spray to fight it because I don't think it works very much. Oh, John. How you doing? But nevertheless, you got to come out here. I put on bug spray today. So has anybody got any bug spray? Is anybody lacking bug spray? Park Service would really like this because this is your safety message. Okay. No?
Bug spray?
Bug spray! DEET. It's a nice little treat. You won't get a tick bite, but you will get cancer in a couple of years.
I'm surprised my knees bend. I have so much knees.
No? Thank you, ma'am. That's very kind of you. Very
Slips out once in a while.
selfless act. Right here. All right, so when they get sprayed up, we'll get out of here. You can't make it yet?
Is that when you get stumped?
Yeah. Okay, cool. So are you going to do anything besides those? Or are you going to try to take them?
Sure. I can do whatever you want.
You got a lot of
Right
people?
there?
Wolverines. Now I don't know. Does somebody know how that ever became associated with the school, Michigan Wolverine? I've never connected the dots right there. But every time I see a Michigan fan, in fact, I was walking down here to come do this tour, and there was this guy walking up with his family, his little kids and everything. And I said, "Do you know where that name came from?" And he just looked at me and walked on past.
He was a smart guy.
And I thought to myself, well, didn't I put on my deodorant? I was right there. That's pretty cool. East Calvary Field. It's on your driving tour map out here. I had the most unusual thing, and it's very hard to impress me real fast, and we'll let this car get out of the way. But I was on Little Round Top the other day, and I looked down. I was in the middle of starting the tour at the Warren statue, and I looked down, and there was not to get into pros or cons, but you got to appreciate the moment here, all right? There was a miniature Trump head laying on the ground, which I picked up, and it was like a rubber ball, you know, and everything with the hair, you know, you could grip it on the hair and everything, and I was like, whoa, you know, that's pretty cool. I've seen a lot of things, but I haven't seen the Trump head laying on Little Round Top, and I said to myself, well, that's cool, and I held it up, and I said, look what I found. This little Boy Scout came running up and claimed it.
Of course.
I wanted to, real fast, and we'll move on, but I wanted to point this out to you because this is not part of the tour, but it's really cool in case you haven't seen it. This is one of the original stone walls, ladies and gentlemen. Let me back over here. This is one of the original stone walls, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't think it's been molested, for lack of a better word, too much. People ask me all the time about, are the stone walls original or not? Well, that all depends on where you're standing, in my perspective. All right, so The problem is that the more traffic the area is, the more they're going to get walked on. The high water mark is the prime example of that. You know, people have crawled up and down on those rocks for ages, and we've had to replace them. And probably a lot of you have read the articles about the numerous people that mail the rocks back to us. All right, Dave knows about that. So if you look at this stone wall right through here, this is going to be the wall that the Virginians are going to align upon. Now, obviously, they took out part of the stone wall to lay in East Confederate Avenue, but it goes over here. But now you get, if you look back here, you get the perspective of the Confederates when the Indiana men charge out in this field. And they could have seen a bit of the Massachusetts men. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that's one of those sad stories from a battle where the orders get mixed up. And they charge and they shouldn't have charged, and they get out in the middle of this field. Well, you can see where they got to, the advance marker out in the middle of this field, and they just get slaughtered. You got Rebs behind you up on that hill, and you got Rebs in front of you, and it's a killing zone right here. That's what happens when things go awry in the battle. Orders miscarry. You ever play the gossip game, right, as a little kid? Well, the orders filtered down and they didn't come out right. And that's what happened to them. So that's pretty cool. They ever walked the length. They anchored their line over here right through this wood line, as many of you know is Rock Creek, and they just anchored their line right through here from there. Movie producer. Haven't seen you in a while, Detroit. All right, so let's walk on over here. How have you been? Good to see you. Do you want me to pose or?
Say good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. And right over here was a field of corn. I took a tour of Champion Hill one time, and this older gentleman, we didn't get much in the way of the battle, but this older gentleman, deep Southern accent, he would just tell us, now right over here is where the Yankees advanced, through this field of corn. Yes, a field of corn. What I got from the tour. There's a lot of corn. Okay, all right, so we're standing in front of, if I get out of the way you can read it, you're standing in front of the Stewart's Brigade marker, which is right here. And Stewart's Brigade is going to be part of Allegheny Johnson's division. To set up the big picture and to go down to the smaller picture, Robert E. Lee has 3 corps in his army, right? Longstreet, Ewell, and Hill, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Corps. Stewart's Brigade is part of Ewell's Corps, which is part of Allegheny Johnson's division, which is therefore a brigade comprising that division. Now, if I had to guess, it was comprised of the 3rd North Carolina, 1st or 2nd Maryland. I'm going to use that interchangeably, depending on what memoir they're talking about. And I'll introduce you to the mysterious man in just a second. He can explain all that numerical confusion right there. 10th Virginia, 37th Virginia, and the 23rd?
23rd.
Right? Does anybody have any information on that? Right now, did I leave anybody? 1st North Carolina, did I say that? Right here? How did it do?
You're good.
All right. Okay, all right. That's pretty good. Okay. So, Stewart's Brigade is going to be the part of Johnson's division. Allegheny Johnson is a story within his own right. He was a large man, and he didn't carry a sword. He actually carried a walking stick, and that's what he would carry in the battle, kind of like Little John would on Robin Hood and so forth. Oh, there you go. Right there. The most I know about Johnson, and the one story that stands out to me off the top of my head, and it's a sad ending, but Johnson's division, to get ahead of this story, is going to be occupying the Muleshoe in 1864 at what was called the Battle of Spotsylvania. And Johnson's division will be overrun, just flat-footed, overrun by Hancock's corps during the battle, and Johnson will go down on top of the earthworks. The Yankees will finally corral him, but he'll be standing atop his breastworks swinging that stick around, knocking the Yankees off the top of it. You can imagine such a thing. And that's how he ends up in a northern prison. And that'll be it for him. But Stewart's Brigade on July 1st is going to be coming into town. So if you know your Gettysburg history, if I can get you to hang on to that, Johnson's division is actually going to be coming in on the Cashtown Turnpike, or Highway 30, past the first day's battlefield. That is unusual. Why is that unusual? Because Johnson's division was the rear of Ewell's corps, and when Robert E. Lee called a concentration right here, he actually got Ewell's corps to turn around. Robert E. Lee initially wanted the Confederate Army to regroup or reassemble on the western side of the mountains, over on the Chambersburg side, but he changed his mind. And Johnson's division was already too far committed by the time that they got the orders to head toward Gettysburg. So as darkness falls on the battlefield on July 1st, Johnson's division is marching into the battlefield. And that's one of the great what-ifs. If you want to get into what-ifs of the Battle of Gettysburg, could have Johnson's division gone into the attack? I doubt it. It's probably pretty late by the time they get there. But for you Gettysburg buffs, it's interesting to note that Stewart's Brigade, Johnson's division, along with Stewart's Brigade, is actually not going to use Highway 30 to get into town, the Chambersburg Pike. They're actually going to get off the road somewhere around the first day's battlefield and utilize the unfinished railroad to march into town. You can imagine what they were seeing as they went through the deep cut and so forth as they went through that. So anyway, they follow the railroad through the town, which will be past the Lincoln train station as it's known today, and they follow the train tracks around, and at some point on the eastern side of town they get off of there. Remember, Gettysburg wasn't as cluttered out toward the east as it is today, and they start to swing into position. Many of you that have been here to Gettysburg before have been to Benner's Hill, which is known as a bad Confederate artillery position. More about that in just a second. They're going to assemble basically behind that hill, which is over here in this direction. And all day on July 2nd, they sit there. They sit there, they sit there, they sit there, and they await orders to advance. Now, the main battle line is not up here, but they're going to send out skirmishers or scouts. They're going to be reconnoitering. I mean, they're not loitering around. These are competent officers commanding up and down this division. So they come out here, and the word is brought back during July 2nd that they can hear what up here? They can hear chopping and picking and shoveling and so forth. And what does that portend? Trenches. The Union soldiers are digging in. And that word obviously filters down through the soldiers' grapevine. And the privates are sitting around wondering, why are we letting them entrench? Why are we not attacking? But orders don't come to advance until later in the evening. Now keep in mind, this really has nothing to do with the privates here in Stewart's Brigade, but they're the ones that have to carry out these orders. Ewell's original orders, the Corps Commander's original orders here on the Confederate left flank, were to make a demonstration and convert it into an attack if practicable out here. So what does that mean? A demonstration is basically you sit out there and wave, you know, and shoot at them every once in a while so they won't move. An attack is when you just come up at them, you know, and try to push them off the hill. Ewell, to me, somebody can disagree if they want to, but Ewell to me doesn't seem to give much thought to a demonstration. Richard Ewell has been criticized quite a bit, and a lot of the criticism, especially after Gettysburg, is fair, in my opinion. But one thing Ewell could not be accused of is, for the most part, nobody's perfect, is not wanting to fight. Ewell is a fighter, and Ewell is chosen as that division commander because he had been an aggressive commander under Stonewall Jackson, and the men knew him. So you want to keep familiar faces out in front of the men. Ewell seems to me that well, he can't see, for one thing. He's got one leg, as you know, and he's not getting up here, but he relies upon what he's hearing right there and what he can't see. And there's really very hard to make a demonstration and not get into an attack. In other words, how do you grab the hornet's nest and not get stung? right? Did you like that? I just thought of that right off the top of my head. If you weren't filming, you could have shared this moment. Over here. So, Stewart's brigade is going to be on the end of an arc. 3 brigades are going into position. Ideally, Johnson would have liked to have utilized his 4 brigades, which included Walker's Stonewall Brigade. But remember, July 2nd, Jeb Steuart is just now showing up. Jeb Steuart is the Confederate cavalry commander. And since the Confederate cavalry are not here, then guess what they got to do? The infantry has got to do the cavalry's job. And so the Stonewall Brigade will actually have to be guarding the rear of the position to make sure the Federals don't come in behind them. So Johnson goes into this first attack on July 2nd with 3 brigades. And the order of the 3 brigades are Jones from the right to left, Confederate right to left, or Jones, Nichols, and Stewart. Sometimes you will see Nichols was not here literally, and the brigade was under the command of Williams. Sometimes you see it referred to as Williams. But I always say Jones, Nichols, and Stewart, so not to confuse anybody. So Stewart is on the end of that line. All right, so going into the attack position, it's kind of hard in these woods to show you this, but Benner's Hill, the way that Johnson's division is set up, is basically like this. All right, and the Union position is over here to most of your left, or behind the camera right now, okay? So what Johnson's division is going to do is swing into position. Now think of it like a door coming into position. If your door, the portion of the door, I get it out in a minute, the portion of the door that is closest to the wall has the shortest amount of distance, right? It has the inside arc. Jones' brigade is that interior position. So it's going to naturally fall. I don't know if Johnson meant to do it this way, but the natural progression of things is that the Confederate attack rolls down the line. Okay, so the first Confederates that are going to be attacking are Jones' brigade, and they're going to be hitting the slopes of Culp's Hill. More about that in just a second. Then Nichols' brigade is going to be hitting the center of what the Union line would be, and then Stewart's brigade will be coming up. All right, we're going to take a slight detour once we figure out what kind of seance we're having down here in the woods. Right there. Oh, they're all right. However you want to enjoy the park, that's fine. I've never understood the rationale, though, of going to hunt. I mean, voluntarily seeking dead spirits. I've never understood what the logic was behind that. I wouldn't recommend it myself. I remember, what are you going to uncover right there? Did you not watch all the 70s horror flicks? I mean, it's not something you really want to do.
And Scooby-Doo.
And Scooby-Doo, who had a Confederate episode. I don't know if any of y'all remember that, but they found General Lee's lost arms and flags in a cave. They don't show that episode anymore. But I tell you what, as soon as I saw that, man, I was outside with my flag, and I was Scooby-Doo, man. I was like,
We're all YouTubing. Yeah, exactly.
It might be on there. I don't know what you'd search. Confederate Scooby-Doo, I don't know. Lee, I don't know. That would be on there. So anyway, what I'm going to do now in introducing this gentleman right here is he's going to take us on a slight detour to show you some of the local landmarks and to throw in some of the bigger story. One of my favorite country singers is David Allen Coe, known as DAC, and he sings some of the saddest country songs that you've ever heard, about mama and trucks and trains and getting drunk. Did I get them all? Something's close to it. I think.
Love Gone Bad.
Okay, it was close enough right there.
Broken Heart.
Prison?
I mean,
Yeah, I left prison out, didn't I? There's a fan right there. Anyway, in his younger days, he billed himself as the mysterious rhinestone cowboy. And he would stand outside the Ryman Auditorium, and of course he wasn't part of the Ryman. He wasn't part of the old Opry. But they didn't know that, and he had a rhinestone suit on. So what he would do between shows is go inside the building and run up and down the stairs to make himself sweat a little bit, and then he would come out front as a sweaty cowboy in a rhinestone suit, and he'd start selling some of his own personal album to the people that'd be rushing for an autograph thinking that he was a star. Okay? That, ladies and gentlemen, is marketing. And I've never forgotten that lesson. So this gentleman will not be introduced by name. He will now be known as the mysterious red shirt man, because he always has on a red shirt.
It's the ghost of AP Hill.
He goes with AP Hill. If you ever see him, he sleeps in a red shirt. He was probably born in a red shirt. But ladies and gentlemen, I give you the mysterious red shirt man right over here. How about a round of applause?
Right, so first off, if I lose my voice here or whatever, everybody can hear me. If you can't hear me, then raise your hand. All right, and I just want to do a little background on the division. All right, Chancellorsville. All right, Chancellorsville, for this brigade loses 800 men at Chancellorsville. All right, with that, they add, on paper, 600 Marylanders. It's actually somewhere in the 400s. They add that to bring the brigade up to strength. All right, and when you think about it, on the hill on the other side at 4 o'clock is Walker's brigade. Walker's new to command. That command he has. Stewart's brigade. Stewart is new to command. As Matt said, Nicholson's wounded. By this time, Nicholson's lost his left eye, his left arm, and his left foot. When he runs for governor of Louisiana in the 1880s, his veterans say that they're going to vote for the rest of him. Okay? So Jones is the only experienced commander in the division on this. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they're positioned on Benner's Hill. Let's do this. All right, so we all know that the story, Longstreet's artillery starts at 3 o'clock firing at the peach orchard. All right, Ewell's demonstration is he's supposed to start at the same time. He gets his message an hour late. And, sorry, bear with me for a second here. I know I got you. All right, so, Latimer, boy major, new to command. Snowden Anderson is the artillery commander for that battalion for Johnson's division. He's shot in the stomach. Okay, he'll survive after the war with a plate on his stomach. All right, so Latimer is 18 years old. He's in charge of the artillery. He opens fire for a demonstration at 4 o'clock. While that's going on, General Meade has a problem on the left. He needs more soldiers to face the Confederate attacks. So he orders the 12th Corps off of this hill. In discussion, they leave one brigade here of 1,500 men. What that does is, instead of there being soldiers in a skirmish line here, they're gone. They go back up the hill. So there's no skirmishers. The Confederates see an opportunity. And at 6 o'clock, they order those Confederates to attack. And as Matt said, the attack will start from the right. Johnson's brigade is closest to Rock Creek. Then Nichols' brigade is the next brigade to attack. The one that has to go the farthest is Stewart, and he has to swing around, and he's going to cross here behind us. As near as I can tell for the crossing, we were at the stone wall. None of them crossing the clearing. They're worried that the Union Army will see them. So 10th Virginia, 23rd Virginia, 37th Virginia, 2nd Maryland, and then the 3rd North Carolina is on the right. I'm sorry, 1st North Carolina is on the right, and 3rd North Carolina is sitting on an island out there in reserve. All right, so that's where they are. Interesting part of the story is that, I'm sorry, I'm talking away from you. Interesting part of the story is that as Johnson starts, or as Stewart starts to cross, he sends 3 companies of the 1st North Carolina to occupy Wolf's Hill, to guard his flank. With that, it's going to take them about 7 p.m. maybe they're crossing. By 8 p.m. they're going to be deep into the woods and looking up the hill. Over here on our left, at some point, the 10th Virginia crosses over the stone wall. And I'm sure Matt will get to them later. All right, where's Matt at? Okay. All right, that's good for an interview. One thing, okay, so crossing point, it's too many people here to take down there now, but I would suggest that after you get some air conditioning this afternoon or tomorrow, walk down there and you can see the whole creek. Yeah, you get right up to that pipe fence that's down there, which is kind of cool, and you'll be able to see the whole creek and where the crossing was. What's also interesting about that is, if you look on the other side, it's flat. And that was the farm lane going from McAllister's Mill to the Benner Farm. So Baltimore Pike to McAllister's Mill to the Benner Farm to the Hanover Road. Folks, that's the Underground Railroad. That's the only site where we have documentation in Adams County that was used in the Underground Railroad. Okay, cool. Yours.
Okay. The mysterious red shirt man. All right. So, who's got the tour? There we go. I know it was over here at some point. Now he can give it. You know, if he looks inside.
Should have went over there.
That would have been great.
Yeah, it would have been. You can stand out here. How many people we got? A lot. Michelle had to give me a count before it's all over with. And slip it to me, eventually, the number. All right, so George H. Stewart, which he has a picture of right there. And the reason that he is interested in the mysterious red shirt man is interested in this area of the battlefield is he is a big Maryland fan. And so George H. Stewart is known, his nickname is Maryland Stewart. He's born on August 24th, 1828. He graduates at age 20-21 at West Point near the bottom of his class. One of his classmates in 1848 was John Buford, aka Sam Elliott. By the time 1861 rolled around, in, how would that be, 13 years, he had advanced to the rank of lieutenant. So he's not shining here. He's going to enter the war as a captain of cavalry, Confederate cavalry I should say, but moved on to lieutenant colonel of the 1st Maryland Infantry soon and became the colonel at 1st Manassas. March of 62, he gets his stars, or his wreaths I should say, becomes a brigadier general in command of both infantry and cavalry there. Stewart came under the scrutiny, though, as many officers would, of none other than Stonewall Jackson. And Jackson doesn't like disobedience. And at the Battle of First Winchester, which is on May 25th of 1862, Stewart is ordered to follow up Jackson's victory with the cavalry charge, or, you know, forward the cavalry, keep the rout on them. Stewart apparently refuses those orders because they have not come through the direct chain of command, even though Jackson is commanding the army. In other words, he is splitting hairs, and Jackson has no time for this. In Napoleonic tactics, the use of cavalry, take East Cavalry Field, wherever the Michigan lady went over here, the purpose of the cavalry is to do what? Follow up that defeated Union army or Confederate army. And they don't charge, and Stewart is therefore yanked from his command. And subsequently, because good officers or West Point trained officers are hard to find, he gets reassigned nevertheless to the infantry, and he's wounded later at the Battle of Cross Keys, which is part of Stonewall Jackson's Valley campaign. He returns though in time for Gettysburg. The Marylanders, where he started in the command, hated him at first. They said in 1861 that he was one of these officers that, you know, I don't know if you say he's a prima donna, but he wanted to, he put the thumb down on them pretty good. For instance, he would go out late at night, 2 or 3 in the morning, he would sneak up on his own picket lines, you know, and he would start hollering at them, Indians, which I don't know what that means. I guess there were supposed to be Indians out in the woods or whatever. He wanted to see if they were on the alert or catch them sleeping and so forth. The Marylanders hated him, but they wrote, and you know, time usually assuages feelings for the most part, hard feelings. They said after the war that they understood what he was doing later because they turned into a well-disciplined unit because he was being so hard on them. You know, I've obviously never been in the military, but I had a guy when I was in high school that was absolutely, he was a senior and he was absolutely a stickler for that drum corps. right there. And we did it over and over and over till I hated him. Right there. But looking back on that, I get it now. And he got it a lot earlier in life than I did. As I already said, they arrive here on the battlefield on July 1st. Let me see if I left anything out. As they're marching through the railroad cut, many soldiers broke ranks to loot the dead, especially of shoes. You can imagine how many shoes they've worn out on here. As one Confederate jerked on a dead Yankee shoe, the man raised up and said, "Mister, I'm not dead yet." Yeah. All right. So, you know, Longstreet, everything on the July 2nd is being the precursor or the catalyst for all this action on this end of the line is Longstreet's attack. As the red shirt man said, Longstreet does not get in position until late in the afternoon. He doesn't start his attack till 4 o'clock, and therefore Johnston's division does not start going into position or into the attack until a couple hours later. The best guess, which do not hold me to this, the en echelon attack, the swinging door, which I described earlier, would be roughly Jones at 6:30, Nichols at 7 o'clock. This will be on the guide exam. Stewart at 7:30. Remember, there's no daylight savings time though, back then. Okay, on the left of Johnston's division, mounted officers rode down the line of Stewart's brigade. The men stood and dressed their ranks. Lieutenant Colonel James L., how do you say it? Hebert? Herbert?
Oh, Herbert.
Herbert.
Yeah.
In New Orleans would be Hebert, I think.
Jimmy Herbert.
Of the 1st Maryland Battalion called to his major underneath him and said to his staff, "Mount your horses quickly, for we are going in." Herbert then rode forward to the front and commanded the battalion, the Marylanders, to forward guide center march. I should say at the beginning of the tour, the 1st Maryland Battalion, why are they called a battalion and not a regiment? A battalion in the Civil War, I don't know how it ranks in the modern military, but a battalion back then was basically half a regiment, 4 or 5 companies. And if you think about logistically, or geographically may be a better word, where Maryland is in the Civil War, it's stuck between Pennsylvania and Virginia. It's known as a border state right here. The Marylanders are having a hard time crossing the Potomac to get into the Confederate Army. And probably most of Marylanders joined the Union Army, if the truth was known about it. And those Marylanders that did cross the Potomac, there are a lot of Marylanders that enlist in Virginia units. Now, there's a project for you. Go siphon all the Marylanders off that were in Pickett's charge, because there's quite a few of them. The red shirt man has pointed them out to me over the years. But that's what they're going to do. There's no Maryland units to join.
I'm sorry, sir. Could you just introduce him? Because none of us know who he is.
He's the mysterious red shirt man. That's who he is.
Could you introduce yourself?
He's the mysterious red shirt man. That's who he is.
He's the ghost of AP Hill. Come on.
As soon as the camera goes off. It's because you can't do this. He's the red shirt man. It's the emphasis dude right here. So if you think about it, the Marylanders are coming up through here. They're what? 300?
It might be as many as 4. That's the largest unit in the brigade.
Coming up through here.
Yeah,
it's large for a battalion.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing else for them to join.
Didn't Richmond issue them a full-fledged regiment?
In October.
In October.
In October, because by the time they're here, they've got 6 companies now.
Pan over here.
Got pan over here. 6 companies. Right. So after Gettysburg into the fall, then they're going to be redesignated as the 2nd Maryland Infantry to avoid that confusion.
Right.
All right. Now you're here, and that's just the Confederate regiment that's here. Realize that there's 3 more 1st Marylands out here floating around on this battlefield. All right. So that creates confusion for everybody.
But when the veterans came to dedicate the monument, they wanted it to say the 2nd.
Well, what they wanted was to say the 1st Battalion, because at the time of the Battle of Gettysburg, that was their unit designation.
Right.
All right. They later become the 2nd Maryland Infantry, and that'll create confusion for the park. And so the GBMA is going to require them to put the 2nd Maryland designation on their monument, so they're not confused with 1st Maryland Eastern Shore, 1st Maryland Potomac Home Brigade, 1st Maryland Cavalry.
I think you're panning back over here now. Okay, let's set up before we step into the woods. I'm trying to do everything I can. I don't mean to keep y'all standing for too long, but I'm trying to do everything I can out on this pavement, okay? Before we step out into those woods. But it's not going to be that bad, but you see what I'm trying to do here. Let's talk about the Union. The Union forces that they're going up against are, it works out well for the Confederates and Johnston's division that they attack so late, because the later that they attacked in the day, Longstreet, follow me here, on the other side at Little Round Top, the wheat field, Peach Orchard, and so forth, has hit the Union line so hard that George Meade decides to strip the forces here at Culp's Hill. This is one, to me, people look at like Stonewall Jackson, if he was here at Gettysburg, etc. You know, what if the Moses came down from the mountain and Robert E. Lee had him at hand or something like that, and the snakes and the, okay, so that were out there. He really wants to know that name. One of the great what ifs to me is, what if George Meade did what he originally thought he was wanted to do? The original orders, ladies and gentlemen, were to dispatch 1 division from the 12th Corps, which is, this is the Union soldiers up here, you don't have to know all this, but dispatch 1 division from the 12th Corps, and then orders came to dispatch the other division. That's how dire the situation is over there, that Meade's willing to gamble. And here comes Johnston's division, and he left the discretion. Slocum's going to be involved in this as the wing commander. He left the discretion to leave behind 1 brigade, Corps Division Brigade. So you stripped out, basically they had, what, almost 8,000 men manning this position from the summit of Culp's Hill down to where you park your car at Spangler Springs. And by the time they stripped the line, those 8,000 men are down to 1,350 New Yorkers. And here comes Johnston's division of Confederates. Of course, the fog of war, they don't know what they're up against. They don't know the odds that are in their favor. But Greene, George S. Greene, who is the commander of these New Yorkers, is going to have the foresight to do what? Which is going to save his bacon. What is it? He is going to dig in. And to go back to the beginning of the tour, all that chopping sound that Stewart and his other Confederates are hearing, that's those New Yorkers. Greene is an engineer. He will later do some big works up in New York City. But he is entrenching those New Yorkers, and the Confederates are going to come up against one of the most formidable positions of the war. Any questions?
Were there any Union pickets out here? Anybody as Johnston's coming around?
There are Union pickets, Neal's Brigade, 6th Corps, on the other side of Rock Creek, and that is going to be the Lost Avenue, what we collectively call, or Neal Avenue officially. But it's its own private property. Probably the best neighbor, quote unquote, that the park ever had was the gentleman who owns the property surrounding Lost Avenue. Basically, he owns those monuments over there, the land on it. And I've never seen somebody so generous with his time as to take people out there. And he's very well, he loves to have people out on his property. But he appreciates people asking. That's called courtesy right there, instead of following the internet and sneaking on his land. He doesn't appreciate that too much. And neither does where they have you park. That neighbor, he's not so friendly, that other neighbor. So we would appreciate it if you want to go see the, as he likes to say, the landowner likes to say, if the hook of the fish hook is Culp's Hill, he's the worm. Right over there in that area. Any others? None? Okay, so what we're going to do is about face. We're going to go up here and we're going to advance. I'm not going to take you across Rock Creek. No, I'm not as brave as Troy. We're going to, yeah, I know, I'm a sellout. But we're going to take you through the woods over here. A little piece. We're going to take a small detour before we come back and do Stewart's advance up through here to try to find the end of the Union line. Let's follow the mysterious red shirt man right over here.
That is where the Second Maryland Monument is. At 8 o'clock on July 2nd, it goes this way. On the other side of the stone wall is the 10th Virginia. Between the monument, between the stone wall and the monument is the 23rd Virginia. Between the monument and here is the 37th Virginia. This is the front for the 2nd Maryland. And off to their right are the 1st North Carolina, 3rd North Carolina still in reserve. All right, so this spot is memorialized, and let's see. I'm sorry, I have these in a different order, and I apologize. But here we go. Okay, so somewhere a day or two after the battle, Forbes makes a drone, and then it becomes this painting. All right, and you can find it online. It's called Forbes Rock. All right, because of the brush today, we can't see it up the hill. But folks, this is where he was standing when he drew this. All right, so if you're the photographer, all right, then you get this view. Now, for the Marylanders and the rest of the brigade, what they can see is, you can see how the hill rises sharply. And the breastworks are up there, and they can see the firing from the Union breastworks, the flash of the barrels coming in this direction. They're going to move forward. The fire gets intense, and so Stewart sends back to Randolph-McKim to bring up the 3rd North Carolina. By the time he gets in this position, the brigade is forward, and it's dark. Now, here's a bit of Gettysburg trivia for you. Isaac Trimble, most of you have heard that name. He's an engineer for the railroads in Baltimore. George Hume Stewart's father is a commissary contractor for the railroad in Baltimore. Randolph-McKim's father also sells supplies to the railroad in Baltimore. And John Archer, from the first day, his dad has a lumber plantation, and his dad sells lumber to make ties to the railroad. So, for their entire lives, these men all knew each other. And that brings them to this point. You gonna do the McKim story later?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so I'll do the graves here too.
Okay, sure.
All right, so, and this is kind of tougher. Let's see how we do this. All right, so, this is from the burial map, the Elliott burial map. All right, and I blew up the center section. And the reason I blew up that center section and the other sections is that I grid searched this area. All right, the stream in between the hills comes in here, and that is very prominent on this location. Okay. All right, now with the stream and the settlement on the other side is going to be low ground, and we'll move that way in a second. But what's this? All right, so this park road is built here after 1895. I don't have a sure date on it, but I do know that when the Park Service gets the property in 1933, they start knocking down houses they can't repair. So if you're looking for what happened to the Rogers house or the Staub house or the Forney house, chances are one or two of them are in these piles here, because this is the dump site. So they dump it on this property because the farmers can't use this property. Now, what that does is it disorientates our view, and if some brave souls want to, we can come further forward this way. And I want to try to just get a view on the other side here. Just watch the ground, it's a little rough. Yeah, got some sticker bushes there, so some space over here. All right. And you can like spread out that way. This is where we're helping Matt collect ticks. That's why we remove all the ticks from the battlefield. You can bring folks here next week. Okay. But you can spread out here on the piles. I don't don't even think Troy's ever taken anybody into this mess. Just for that. All right, so what we have here is this is the stream. All right, and you can see some of the indentations. All right, on the other side of the stream, well, this is ground and leaves, everything else that's come off the hill for centuries. And so you have dirt, soft dirt on the other side, covered by trees today that weren't here in 1863. Yes? Okay. Yeah. All right, so got a couple more. I think we've lost the intern.
We lost the drunken intern. Huh?
That's it. Are we good? Okay. Before Gettysburg, the boys in town swam in Rock Creek. The photographs that Tipton took of Rock Creek are in that direction. How did they get there? All right, if they come through the Spangler property, Spangler Lane, and then they'll come through, follow this stream, and that gets them to Rock Creek. This is probably also used as a logging road at some time, this way. Okay? For the road we came in on, that has to be post 1895. West Confederate started in 1895. As soon as the War Department gets control of the park, they buy Lower Culp's Hill. Believe it or not, they only controlled or only owned the top of the hill. All right, so all this property in 1895 comes into the park's auspice. In 1933, again, they're going to use this as a dump site. Now, what's interesting, we're not worried about the dump site. All the folks, because they see mounds and everything else, they get confused and they think that this is Confederate burial trenches. The Confederate burial trenches are here in front of us. All right, that would have been, get my duck. I'll finish it right. Okay. All right, so we're going to come in on the stream, comes this way, all right, and the stream's going to cut across, and what we would see is, we would see one long burial trench toward the top of the hill, then we would see 3 smaller trenches, and that would probably be 30 men each, over in this direction, in the woods, all right, and then coming down from the hill, we would have another 4 trenches, and then over there in Jones's position, which is off to our right, would be another 3 trenches. And again, it's all in this soft ground here. All right. Now, the photographers came here after the Confederates were exhumed in the 1870s. And they took a couple of pictures. All right, and here's one of the pictures that they took. And anybody along the lines here when we're walking, I can stop and show you this. You can find it online. All right, and it looks to be this area, but it's not. It's on the other side of the hill in Jones's position where there are no trenches drawn. So if I was standing at the Jones Brigade marker, this picture in hand, all right, I'd be able to see where those Confederate burial trenches are. All right, but you get the idea. Johnson loses 500 men killed in the attacks on Culp's Hills over 2 days. We are not sure what the other half of the units lose, but we can assume that it's close to those kind of numbers. So with that, that's how many Confederates would be buried here or in Party Field. We'll get to Party Field later. All right, so here's the position. It is 8 o'clock on July 2nd. The 2nd Maryland is in this ravine that we followed, and they're headed up the hill. When the sun breaks here, then the hill goes straight up. In the wintertime, I could take you that way, but it's not feasible now, okay, with this. But there is one trail to go up to 2nd Maryland. We'll use that. Matt, you want to take over?
Yeah, are we ready to reverse?
I've been told there's still Confederates buried here.
Entirely possible. Okay. Now, and here it is. It's the issue of records. Okay. And we don't have records of all the exhumations. All right. So then the absence of records means that maybe they weren't. All right. Coco says 100.
I've never been out here to this site. That's pretty cool. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to keep on going, but what I want you to get out of this is basically reiterate what he already pointed out, is we're in the low ground right here. And if you come out here in the wintertime, like the mysterious red shirt man said, is really the only time, because that's when you can see the Union positions. But take it for granted. This is the one thing that shocked me when I came out here in the winter, because I never came out here. One of the few areas of the battlefield, we just don't traverse this area too much because of these woods and how thick they are. But the Union position, as you drive up the tour road like you're going toward Culp's Hill, you're getting around the 78th and 102nd New York, what's in there, the 137th, the 149th New York, all those monuments in there. Literally, you can't tell from the road, but literally the ground just drops off on a ridge. And that's what the Confederates, the Louisianans from Williams or Nichols Brigade, when they attack through here, they're going to be going up against. What I want you to get out of here for Stewart's Brigade, though, is this is where the North Carolinians are going to be, the 3rd North Carolinians, and then the Marylanders to their left. But you're in a swell right now. They're getting hit from the high Union position over there from in front of them. They're getting an enfilade fire because Louisiana's attack is bogged down, so I'm sure they shifted to what they could see over here. And then they have, as we ascend this hill, we're going to go through this low area, we're going to ascend this hill up here, and you're going to be on the left flank of what was then Stewart's Brigade. And what I mean by that, ladies and gentlemen, to go back to the beginning of the tour, when Stewart's Brigade is wheeling like a door, as it's closing like a door, the brigade breaks apart. And that's what ends up happening. That's the first half of this fight on July 2nd. The right half of the brigade, where we're standing right now, the right half of the brigade instead of the left half is going to keep on going because they're going to stay attached to the rest of Johnston's division. The left half is just going to be slung off. And they're going to be tied down because Rock Creek is deeper on the left flank of Stewart's Brigade than it is on the right flank. So that slows them down pretty much. And they have, in some areas, they have to cross single file. So that's why you have, I hope it's making sense. Tell me if it doesn't make sense. But that's why the right half, the North Carolinians and the Marylanders, attack here by themselves. And they get into this swell. They don't know they were going to go into the swell. And they have no support yet on their left. So these New Yorkers, which are over here at this time, the 137th, then you got the rest of Green's Brigade coming up through here, have got them pinned down where we are. Ground zero. You know, everybody likes that Devil's Den video. There you are. Everybody likes that Devil's Den video where I talk about the bowl. Everybody wants to go out there and see that bowl. You're in something similar right now. And it's hard to see the ravine, for lack of a better word, or the low ground in the summertime. So come back when it's better view. Any questions? Anything not?
Are those paintings accurate to what it looked like in here at the time?
The ones he held up?
Yes.
They're,
I mean the wide openness of it.
Yeah, they are period sketches. The one thing that I would assume that they had and we do not were animals. And going back to the generous landowner that's our neighbor over here, he has, I hope it's still alive, he had left, last time I checked, a pet cow. And you would be surprised how much that one cow can beat down the underbrush. I don't know how much it's on, 20 or 30 acres. You know, that one cow would literally just laying in it, eating it. You know, you can see a lot further in his property, on his property, than you can out here. I would attribute that to, and of course foresting too, timber cutting. That's why you could see out here a lot better than you can today. Very good question. Is this where we start the Jeopardy song? No? That's still on.
Yes.
Yeah. It is. She's Alex Trebek, right?
Yep.
She's still doing it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to follow the mysterious red shirt man, and he's going, after he speaks, wait a minute, do not breathe. The mysterious red shirt man wishes to say something.
Look, the streams here is a little bit muddier than normal, so watch your step here. Maybe help other folks to stable. And we're going to follow the line of the 37th Virginia up the hill.
He just doesn't know where we are. He's going to go up there and scout. So if y'all want to, if you could, file around over there by Hot Pink. And
What?
I always like people bring their sister.
We're Indiana, not Kentucky. That's crazy.
It is crazy.
What they really do.
You know, this is the time period, ma'am, where the people are wondering why they're doing this. But you give them like 2 hours for the tour to be over, and you'll give them, after they get cooled off, they'll just be thinking it's the coolest thing they won't ever been. But the people didn't know what they were getting into, they're second thinking themselves right
Yes.
now. Especially tonight. They're going to get more attention from their spouses than they have in years. All these ticks out here.
Like Smittix tonight on Culp.
Smittix, yeah.
That's what
I
we're
could do
going
black
for.
and tan. Yeah, I like that. Hey, we're going to stop right here just for a second. That guy really want to know what the red shirt man's name was. He got mad about that. Y'all keep coming up. We're gonna hunker on in. Y'all having a good year. David Price, man, he's freaking.
We're doing all right.
Chris Sale, he hasn't lost his marbles.
I got the bump handed to him last night.
By who?
I don't want to talk about that.
Where?
Yeah,
In New York. I'm a big Baltimore fan. And
you are?
Say hi, Stephen.
Ole Miss.
Ask Stephen where he is. Why isn't he here yet?
Why isn't he here? I don't understand where he is. His brother says he's still in bed because he's a newly married man. I don't understand why. I'd probably still be in bed too if I could.
You're a bad man.
Who's that?
He sent it to his brother right there.
Yeah, I'm trying to get him out of bed to get up here, but
He's a drunkard.
yeah.
I saw the other day, I saw an advertisement for, an old advertisement that David Wills, the guy, this is what you get if you stay up with me. The David Wills, who was obviously invited Abraham Lincoln here, he was one of the, back in the 1850s, one of the founders of the temperance movement here in Gettysburg. And you know, if you've ever been to an AA meeting, which I'm sure all of you have, but you wouldn't tell me because, okay, so right beside David Will's house, he had a little wooden shack. And you think that AA meetings are just something new. They advertised in the paper that they would be open from 10 to 10. And they would have reading literature available, and they would have, wait for it, hot coffee. I did note later that the temperance movement opened the room even earlier than 10 o'clock. And I'm thinking to myself, my God, who's getting up then and doing that? They must have really been, if they called you a drinker back then, you drank. I once felt bad about myself until I went to Colonial Williamsburg, and I found out on my history tour of Colonial Williamsburg that the average American colonist back then consumed 9 pints a day. And at that point, I felt a lot better about myself. Al, the tour's up here, Al. There's no learning back there. She'll be okay. Come on up. All right. All right, so real quick orientations why I wanted to get everybody up here, and thank y'all for coming out in the middle of the woods. And let me see if I can figure it out for you right here. I told you at the last stop, ladies and gentlemen, that you were down in the ravine. Okay, so Stewart's Brigade, this is not going to make any sense on a video, okay? But if you're standing here and you can see the lay of the ground, Stewart's Brigade, this is what you get for being here in person instead of watching Stuff Rider all the time. All right, so if you think about it, Stewart's Brigade is coming this way. The right half of, as I said at the earlier, is going, the extreme right half is going to be in that ravine. Walking up this hill, here is the left flank. Here comes the Marylanders. right through here. Now, to reiterate what the mysterious red shirt man said, Stewart, because his line is broken, he's over here on the right-hand side of the brigade. He summons up the reserves, and that's going to be the 1st North Carolina that's going to be coming into position. Randolph McKim, who is one of the staff officers, who from Maryland, is obviously going to know what the situation is on the ground. So McKim is recruited to lead the reserves, the North Carolinians, into position. As the North Carolinians are coming up behind you, McKim is as lost as you are that day on July 2nd. And he gets up to this area, and it's surprisingly, I like McKim's memoirs if you ever want to check them out, because he admits when he makes errors. That always screams to me that you've got a good memoir right there when the guy is telling you what he did wrong. But McKim gets to somewhere in this area, and he thinks that he's turned the Union line, because he can hear all this firing going on, but he's guessing. He's guessing by the noise that's going on. So he faces the North Carolinians and tells them to open fire. Oh, shit. And they haven't gone far enough. And they end up shooting into the backs of their friends down here. And McKim is going to write that, that it didn't last long, that he screamed, "Fire on them, boys, fire on them." And the 1st North Carolina fired until a Major William L. Parsley, commander of the 3rd North Carolina, rushed up from the right and shouted, "They are our own men. Cease firing." The 3rd, they had been firing into the back of their own friends. All right, so these Confederates you talk about being in a bad position, the ones down in the ravine down there are not only getting shot at by the Yankees, they're getting shot at from their friends. There's no telling how many of them left at that point. I'd say that, okay, that's all right. We'll see y'all later, all right? Because nobody likes that. The thing I want you to see, though, is the Confederates are coming up here, and the tour road is only maybe 30, 40 yards in this direction. It'll make better sense once we break out of the woods. But the 137th New York is ahead of us. You will recall, ladies and gentlemen, if you're looking at your maps right now, that the 137th New York was originally, everybody talks about them being into traverse and bending back the right line. Their original position was extended on the next hill. For those of you at home, that's where the Confederate Maryland Monument is. That's the original position of the 137th New York, in the extended line, not where their monument is today. So if you think about it, Stewart's brigade is bogged down. The New Yorkers at this point outstretch the Confederates that have become engaged. Does that make sense? Now what I want you, it's hard to see, but I hope you can see how the hill kind of ascends behind you over here. All right? To orient you, the toll road, your cars are parked over here in Spangler Spring, and the East Confederate Avenue, remember we went against one-way traffic. We walked down the toll road this way and then cut in through the ravine and came back this way. We've made a giant circle. If you were to walk out straight out through here, you would come out to the toll road that we have already walked on. Does that make sense? So we're making a big circle as we come up through here. Anyway, where we started the tour, and I stopped you at the stone wall, shortly past there, a little piece past there, the left flank, remember Stewart's brigade's moving this way, the left flank of Stewart's brigade is finally going to get across Rock Creek. And they're in a big arc, and I hope this hill, you can sort of see it, they're going to be coming around the edge of this hill. Right through here. They can hear the firing and they can hear what's not in front of them. They obviously get out. The left half is probably in the vicinity of Spangler Springs, somewhere in there, and they get in this vicinity and they're looking for the end of that Union line. It's the 20th Maine all over, except as you'll see, the Confederates are going to be more successful on this end of the line initially anyway than the Alabamians were on the other half of the line. Any questions?
Hey, Matt?
Yes.
Let me add one for here. Yeah, we're going to go this way.
Okay.
And the trail gets better in about 20 feet. The line for the 37th Virginia is here. And from that line, somewhere in this location, is the color bearer. All right, and his name is Jesse Jefferson. He's from Baltimore, Maryland. He'll be wounded during this attack, and he'll die on July 4th of '85.
All right,
It's a person.
lead us on.
But I have a picture of his gravestone, and to me, the artistry looks kind of the same as the monument. Yeah, so I thought that was kind of cool. That's the one picture you won't find on the internet that I have.
Where's that at?
That is at Loudon Park Cemetery. That's where that one is. Go for it.
Is it the custom of the young people now not to wear socks?
I am wearing socks, I just can't see them.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool.
It's a trick.
What do you call those in the Walmart?
No show socks.
No show socks. I'll be getting me a pair of those. No show socks. Always like to be up on the latest fashion. As you can see, the government outfits me very well. These quality clothes which I have on.
Available in quantity also.
Yes. We occasionally get people like, I don't know what you call them, like patch hunters, patch collectors, and they'll want to swap like a police patch or a fire patch for one of these, but we don't get them like detached. So the only way we can get them is like take a razor and take an old shirt and like cut it off or something. It's too much confusion. All right, now this is where, if you want to get into the Battle of Gettysburg, you want to get off in the weeds, okay, this is where you have to make a split decision on what you believe and what you don't believe. There are two units, and it depends on who you read. I told you the left half of Stewart's brigade is coming up, basically the Virginians. The 23rd, the 37th, and the 10th Virginia are swinging in the line. Depending on who you're reading, it's either going to be the 23rd on the right or the 37th on the right. I believe the Lano map right there, which Ted Williams over here has got, is I believe they have the 37th on the I've actually held one of his bats in Gettysburg. Big old thing. That's back when men were hitting balls. What was I going to say? Ted Williams, I believe the 37th is on the right. Am I correct on that? And the advance on that? So anyway, whatever. The 23rd, the big picture is this. The 23rd Virginia reportedly only had something like 50 men anyway. Why? Because they only had 4 out of 10 companies up here during the attack. So, roughly about 10 men, 10, 15 men apiece in each company. It's really incidental. But anyway, 23rd Virginia is advancing, and it must be growing dark by now. In the growing darkness, they start shooting, and we have an account about Lieutenant Colonel Simeon Walton, commanding the 23rd, was still unsure who was in his front. So in the darkness, growing darkness, he called for a volunteer, and that volunteer, which I bet wasn't a volunteer, was the lieutenant. And his name was Charles A. Raines. The colonel ordered a ceasefire and sent the lieutenant ahead to ascertain what was in advance. Raines advanced to within 20 paces of the shadows. This is going to be happening approximately back here over in this area. He's going to advance roughly to about 20 paces of the shadows there, and I guess he's going to stop and listen for a little while. And what he hears in front of him is not, I'm going to do this for the motorcycles get here, is not from North Carolina. I have to get one. I just really have to get one. But I really need a van, because this is not practicable for 3 kids. Although I could put a sidecar on it, I guess. Is there an age limit on putting kids on the motorcycle? I don't know.
One way to find out.
Well, one way to, yeah, I guess I will be sure to find out too one day. All right, so they go out in front. Walton goes out in front. Colonel Walton orders a ceasefire. Raines goes out in front. As he gets up there, he hears that their accent are Union troops, and he has his pistol in his hand, and as he fires point blank, basically, into these Union soldiers, the 137th New York. He is retreating backwards the whole time, screaming at the top of his lungs, Yankees, Yankees, Yankees. And at that point, I don't know if he went to the ground. He probably got more adrenaline pumping than I can ever imagine. But the Confederates opened fire. And when they're opening fire, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to signal the end of the 137th New York. Not as a unit, obviously, but the end of them being on this hilltop right here. Because now the Confederates have gotten behind them. And as the firing grows, I'm sure the New Yorkers didn't break all at once and start retreating, but more and more Confederates start coming into line. And they don't have to ascertain where the enemy is in the growing darkness. They can see by the flashes of the muskets. And so now, in the midst of all this, to get everything going, that Colonel Walton, went in search of reinforcements. He knew that the 1st Maryland should be to his right somewhere, and he goes over there and walks until he finds Major Goldsborough. Walton asked the major what he thought they should do, and the major thought they should attack, but stated he didn't command the battalion, so he couldn't order the charge. It's nice, isn't it? Hadn't had this before. It's when you get big time. Go over here and get these interns over here. right here. Look at this. Right there. That's when you're big time. Get your own assistants. Right here. Even though I didn't know they were coming. It's still pretty cool. And he's dressed nice, though. Nice as dressed. Guy in the whole group right here. So anyway, Goldsborough asked the major to charge. Major says he can't do it. He's not in command here. And Walter responded, "Well, I shan't wait for orders any longer, but will charge the works if I lose every man in my regiment. Take the responsibility and charge with your left at the same time." The major is commanding half of the Maryland battalion. Goldsborough assented and prepared his men to advance also. So what ends up happening is those Marylanders come from here, the Virginians come from here, and in the growing darkness they pinch these New Yorkers, the 137th, on top of this hill, and eventually work around them. Some of you can see better than others over here, but the New Yorkers go tumbling in this direction down into this ravine. And they regroup on the other side. And that's where you get lucky in a battle, because 137th didn't build it, but they fell back and they happened to find a traverse, which, if you don't know, if your entrenchments are this way, a traverse runs at right angles to your entrenchments. It's an entrenchment, but it's used for a communication trench. It's to get you up to the front line without getting your full head blown off. So you dig a ditch at right angles so you'll be safe relatively getting up there. The traverse, which they never expected to use, is going to be what the 137th rallies on. Now can Stewart's brigade push ahead and take this position in the growing darkness? Because here is their opportunity on July 2nd. Any questions? We're going to step, not far, let's step right across the road over here so we can see the ravine. We'll finish off July 2nd. Okay. That's a pretty cool story. As they sweep the Union troops off this knoll and the New Yorkers are falling back to that traverse, basically it ran at right angles. I can't see, these trees are in my way, but basically where you see that cut down stump right there, the traverse is going to run across the road, maybe slightly behind there in that general area. As the two groups are, as two sides are regrouping, Major Goldsborough walks along his line. That's the Marylander. And if you can imagine being this lost, the Marylanders are now over here facing this direction. A man comes riding up on horseback behind him and he says, "How's the fighting going?" And Goldsborough looks around at him, and he's not from North Carolina either. "I don't know," replied the Confederate major, and slowly walked over and seized the reins of the horse. And with that, he took out a pistol and put it in his face right there and said to the man, a Confederate corps, and you are my prisoner, sir. The major had captured, as you would know, a lieutenant named Harry C. Egbert of the Union First Corps, who obviously did not know the Confederates were in this area. Okay, rest of Stewart's brigade starts extending the line to the left. On this tour, from right to left, Confederate right to left behind you is going to be, or your right to left, is the 23rd, 37th, and 10th Virginia. At about 8 o'clock in the evening, give or take a few minutes, the 71st Pennsylvania is going to come marching up the Spangler Lane. Somebody asked me to show them that farm lane right here, Ted Williams. So roughly, approximately, the farm lane, as you look off over here, ladies and gentlemen, will be where that star is, a little bit behind there. The Spangler farm actually still exists. Now, there's a lot of Spanglers around here, but that particular Spangler farm, what was his first name, Ken?
Henry lives there, Abraham owns it.
Henry lives there, Abraham owns it. The farm lane actually, I knew you'd know, the farm lane actually runs behind that house and came out in the present day National Park. Well, here comes reinforcements for the Union. 71st Pennsylvania is going to come marching along, and if you need to be re-familiarized with them, they are the same unit that is at the angle the next day at Pickett's Charge. One of the more famous Pennsylvania units that are here. The general accounts that you see of the 71st Pennsylvania is they are sent over here without a guide. And so when they get in the darkness, they don't know where they're going. And here come these Virginians feeling their way through the woods. And here come those Pennsylvanians marching in column down that farm lane. And all of a sudden the Virginians open up, Stewart's brigade opens up on them and starts shooting them. And they're like, as they're marching along through here, you know, they're like, well, that's not fun. Right here, we don't know where we're going. We don't know who we're supposed to connect with. So they just turn around and leave. Okay? But to show you how much that we are learning on this new tour, according to new research that was done in the library, it is actually noted that the 71st Pennsylvania deploys on the Union line. Now, how long they stay here, I don't know if you were able to ascertain or not. They didn't stay long, but regardless, the story's the same. They don't stay long. I like my story better than probably what actually happened. So anyway, you can see the point. There's a lot of confusion out here. Okay, so now you've got over here where we were in the ravine, going up that hill we just climbed. You got the 3rd and 1st North Carolina. Sensing opportunity, Stewart asked his left regiment, the 10th Virginia, that's way out here, to find out what was out in front. And Colonel Edward Warren ordered his men who were perpendicular to the stone wall. Can we see that from here? Can y'all see that stone wall right here? Yep, that stone wall, see it over there? You see it, you probably see it better by that big old tree right there. He asked the 10th Virginia to follow that stone wall as an alignment and go down through there and find out where the Union boys were. All right, so here they go. After reaching what he perceived to be the enemy's rear, he ordered the 10th to face to the right, that'd be roughly where that lady's jogging, right down there, and fire. On the Union side, Howard was sending, Howard, was sending reinforcements by now, and the remnants of the 61st Ohio and the 157th New York are going to show up. And they're going to prolong the 137th New York's line. So once again, the New Yorkers that were here, you don't have to know all this, but some of you want to know all this. The 137th New York is positioned here, and then you have Ohioans and New Yorkers that are positioning, extending the line behind this small group of woods over here. And so the Confederates' big picture for Stewart is the window of opportunity is closing quickly for them in the growing darkness. All right, possibly with the 10th Virginia going forward, several of the Virginians may have crossed the Union lines because several Union prisoners are going to be captured by the 10th. All right. With this, basically, the two sides are going to reach a stalemate, and Stewart's attack is effectively over for the day. New Union reinforcements, though, keep coming into the area, and keep bumping into the Confederates. Some of them, no certain order, the 14th Brooklyn, y'all remember them? The 6th Wisconsin, surely you remember them. And the 6th Wisconsin apparently remains near the Traverse, probably in reserve behind the New Yorkers, until Kane's brigade comes up and relieves it. Now, let me ask you a question right here. If you've been to Gettysburg quite a bit, which I take it you have if you're going to be on this tour, or you're completely lost at this moment and wondering why you ever got on this tour, or you might be wondering what the real name of the mysterious red man is. Red shirt man right there. How did you pull into Culp's Hill? What road modern road do you take, an old road do you take in order to start into Culp's Hill? What's the name of that? It's outside the visitor center. So my question to you, ladies and gentlemen, is what is the key to this area? People ask me all the time on Little Round Top, is this the key to the battlefield? Well, it's the key to this area of the battlefield. I can't say it's the key to the battlefield right here. What is the Achilles tendons, the two Achilles tendons or the arteries of the Union Army that they cannot lose? The Baltimore Pike and the Taneytown Road. And Little Round Top controls the Taneytown Road, and basically this area, Culp's Hill, etc., and this area specifically, the Saddles, for lack of a better word, Spangler Springs area, they're on the edge of controlling the Baltimore Pike. The Confederates' objective, if they knew where they were, doesn't have to be Culp's Hill. What should it be? Baltimore Pike. If you cut the pike, then you effectively isolate the rest of the Union Army. You knock out Cemetery Hill and you knock out Culp's Hill. Why? Because the Union Army's got to do something. Now, it's easy for me to say because I don't have to sit there and hold it, because George Meade's going to do something about that for sure. He can't have that happen. And they're isolated. How do you resupply them? How do you reinforce them? I mean, how do you hold a position on the Baltimore Pike? But the bottom line is, that's not what happens. The bottom line is, the Confederates don't know their opportunity. They don't know how close they are to the Baltimore Pike. Major Goldsborough sent Captain John W. Torsch, T-O-R-S-C-H, if I'm pronouncing that right, and another companion to see if the pike was nearby. Torsch returned with info that wagons were moving up and down the road. How many hundreds of yards? If we got quiet, you could probably hear it over there. Later, Allegheny Johnson and Steuart, Maryland Stewart, visited the area, and the major told them of his findings. Allegheny Johnson listened to the sound of wagons in the darkness a mere 600 yards away from where he was standing and concluded that the Union Army was retreating. And he walked away and nothing more was said of it. But that's easy for me to say. It's easy to pass judgment. It's easy to say we should have taken Cemetery Hill on July 1st, right? Those people right over here. What are the Confederates more concerned about anywhere? Are they concerned about the Baltimore Pike, or are they concerned about the enemy? That's what's grabbed their attention, and they can't refocus themselves because that really wasn't their objective. Their objectives weren't to come out here. Any questions? No questions. All right. This is when we do the evening of July 2nd. No? Okay. Dave thought it was funny. That's what they did. They tried to sleep. But throughout the night, I won't go into all this because we'd be out here way past. We're already supposed to be out here. Union forces are coming back. Remember the 12th Corps that I told you was dispatched to go reinforce the Union left around the wheat field and Round Tops, etc.? Well, guess what? Half of them never reached there. Half of them marched down the Baltimore Pike and don't know where to turn, so they just turn around and come back. Well, they're coming back in the darkness. Let's put it around midnight or somewhere around there, probably throughout the night. Here comes the 12th Corps back. You know what their orders are? Their orders are to reoccupy their original position. And what don't the Union soldiers know as they come up in the darkness? They don't know that the Confederates occupy the trenches. And so what you have throughout the night of July 2nd in this area, probably down by Spangler Springs, etc., and flare-ups over here too, but all around you, is you have Union forces bumping into Confederate forces and vice versa as both sides grope for each other in the darkness. You have multiple accounts of Union soldiers riding up into the Confederate lines and they're like, you know, what the heck are you doing here? And they capture a lot of them because they just walk right into them. July 3rd, Union dispositions. Those of you who have maps, Candy and Kane's Brigade are going to extend Green's right along the Baltimore Pike. See that big star down through there? The Union forces start extending their line to basically bottle in Stewart's brigade right here. Ruger's division, which is the first woods you entered when you turned off Baltimore Pike. That's on the other side of where you parked your car. It's Culp's at Spangler Springs. That's going to be Cold Grove and McDougal's brigades are going to deploy there. So effectively, by the time the sun comes up on July 3rd, Stewart's brigade is, I wouldn't say isolated, but they're surrounded out here. Does that make sense? Go back to the beginning of the tour. First thing I said to you, remember this. Remember when I pointed the ridge out and I pointed up at the knoll? Now we're at that point. Stewart's brigade is holding from here, back here, around through the ravine, and basically encircling back where we started the tour on East Confederate Avenue. All right, so what do Union Army usually do? What do they have a lot of and the Confederates don't have any of?
Artillery.
Artillery. Well, you do study it. And this is going to get into Powers Hill. All right, some people make a lot of visits up there. So anyway, that's where the Union artillery is deployed, and they open up on them. McAllister's Hill, Powers Hill. Have they cleared off that golf course yet? That putt-putt golf course? No? Still there? Is it open?
No.
That's going to look cool when they do that. Okay, so they open up here. The Confederates don't have any artillery. And so you talk about being in a bad position. All those shells, note it sometime. When you go up to Powers Hill and so forth, and you take a bottle of Kill Barons or Kill Bagans or whatever it's called up there, some foul tasting stuff. Not that I would know. You remember this sometime. Note the distance from Powers Hill to this place right here, okay? That's how far those Union cannons are shooting. And Stewart's brigade is who they're firing at primarily. And the overshots, I'm sure, is hitting the rest of Johnson's division. But the North Carolinians, the Virginians, and Marylanders, they just got to sit here and take it. Bam, 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 bam. And there's nothing they can do about it. Kind of demoralizing, I'm sure, but they're veterans, so they'll take it. On the Confederate side, Richard Ewell, that one-legged Confederate Corps commander, is going to seek to exploit the ground gained by Johnson's division. Remember, he's never been up here. He never gets up here. He therefore doubles the size, though, of the attacking force. That Stonewall Brigade, now Jeb Stewart's on the ground. The Confederate cavalry have arrived. The Stonewall Brigade is released. They get to come to the Culp Hill area. They get to deploy. It's their turn now. He bulks them up too with 2 regiments from Smith's Brigade, which is Early's division, and Daniels and O'Neill's Brigade, which are Robert Rhodes. Some of you have been on that walk with me, Daniels and O'Neill's. Okay, and of course he's going to swing Stewart into here too. Johnson had received reinforcements, and the Stonewall Brigade is now positioned behind Stewart. How do we want to do this? So, first time we'll put you right here, we'll put Johnson right here. You will stand behind him, right over here. So you got Stonewall Brigade, you got Stewart right here. You will come on up. You stand behind the deer hunter. You ever see that movie? It's a dark movie. Did I get it right? I still can't watch it. That roulette scene when he's like Did I get the movie right?
Yeah.
Who was in that?
De Niro.
De Niro, but Christopher Walken. How could I forget that? Oh my God, The Deer Hunter. Dude, gotta check it out. All right, very dark film. All right, so.
Lord.
Jimi Hendrix Experience liked it.
Yeah.
Okay, so coming up here, Daniel's Brigade is going to form in support of Jones and O'Neill for Nichols. All right, so well, if I get you two to scoot to your left, over there, you two, Carol, where? Right here, and I want to a few more people. I need two more. Who we got? Who wants to come? Who wants to be part of the human map? Don't everybody volunteer at once.
I'll help you.
Well, thank you. How about John Denver? I'm gonna need him too. Over here. Okay, so if one of you will stand behind the red shirt woman. Wow, right there. The mysterious. I don't know if she's too mysterious. Okay, so let's do this. So right here you've got, confuses even me, you've got Stewart. You got Stonewall Brigade supporting them, okay? Then over here, you have got Nichols Brigade, right here, supported by O'Neill's Brigade, all right? And then right over here, you have got Jones's Brigade, supported by
CJ's.
Thank you very much. Supported by Daniel's Brigade. What is Ewell basically done here? Here's the 3 front brigades, here's the 3 rear brigades. What has he basically done here? He has placed his men in mass. And to simplify it for you, the first rank up here is Johnson's original division. The second rank are portions of Early's and portions of Rhodes' division. If you really want to get off into the weeds right here, Rhodes' division was originally positioned where the carnival is going on right now. Over at the rec park at Long Lane, right there. They have to march all the way around during the night of July 2nd to get in a position. July 3rd, though, Ewell wants to take this position. Before he can get the attack off, ladies and gentlemen, the Union beats them to the punch. That's going to be that artillery bombardment I'm talking about. They could probably see the Confederates stirring. That's just a hypothesis, and they were ordered to open up. But regardless, the Union infantry is ordered to make an attack. But the Union infantry is behind breastworks. What would you do? I'd stay put. So I think most Union soldiers just started shooting to placate the generals who were off in the rear, because the generals will hear what? Noise, and they'll figure that, oh, well, they're attacking right there. But the Confederates don't attack first. The Union does, so to speak. I don't think, like I said, I don't think it's much of an attack.
The mysterious red man seemed to take issue with something you said.
Yes?
No, just to add, the Stonewall Brigade, all right, they're lined at the bottom of the hill in that ravine where you were standing at. All right, if I think of them going this way, yeah, north-south, all right, so that's their position, just to get an idea of where they're out in the field.
All right. Hot firefight rages all morning. At one time, the Marylanders are going to run out of ammunition. I've had this question over the years. How do they replenish ammunition? Well, you can't drive a wagon up here. So what they do is I don't know how close they get the wagon, but on the other side of Rock Creek, they have the ammunition wagon. They send some men back there, and they take a cartridge box, or a case probably is a better word, and they pour the whole contents of it. What is that, 1,000 rounds? 2,000 rounds? How many is in a case? They pour it into a blanket, and they hold it on 4 corners, and they run it up to the front line for the Maryland men. And that's how they replenish it. They come in packs of 10 right there. All right. 3 regiments. I already told you that Kane and Green's Brigade are going to come back from the Union Army. 29th Pennsylvania, 109th Pennsylvania, 111th Pennsylvania, extend Green's right. Those are out there. We're in the distance. To the left of Kane was Candy's Brigade with 3 regiments in reserve. 5th Ohio on the left, 147th on the right, 29th Ohio in reserve. second attack, it's going to be Johnson's turn. And the center and the right of Johnson's division with the left flank of Stewart are going to attack. Stewart's brigade, the North Carolinians, the Marylanders are going to attack through here. They're not going to get any headway. Nichols' brigade's going to attack. They're going to bog down. They're going to be relieved by O'Neill's brigade coming forward. And they don't get anywhere either. They just incurred needless casualties. Now the third attack, which we're going to follow in depth and be our final thing for the day, was the final push by Stewart's brigade against the right of Gary's men. Now this is where it gets, I have to do big picture again. It was Robert E. Lee's intention, ladies and gentlemen, that Robert E. Lee would say after the war, in private, not in public, that he tried for 3 days to get his corps commanders to attack in unison at Gettysburg, and he failed. And this is basically a great example. This is a good example of a bad example right here. He sends word. If you notice, a lot of people fail to note this because they're not looking in this area of the official records to see this. But General Ewell in his report states directly, clearly, that he received orders or news or information that General Longstreet would be prepared to assault at 10 o'clock in the morning. That is, ladies and gentlemen, what will become known as Pickett's Charge. Okay? Ewell says because he was told that Longstreet was attacking at 10 o'clock that he decided that General Lee ordered him to renew the assault at that time also. What is General Lee trying to do? He is trying to put simultaneous pressure on the Union line. It has to be weak somewhere. And even if you don't take this position, General Lee doesn't know the strength of the position. Ewell has told Lee that he has an opportunity here. This is what Lee is acting on, is the intelligence that he's received, which Ewell is getting it third hand too. And the poor privates are going to have to end up bearing the brunt of this. But anyway, Ewell is going to order that attack forward. To tie it into the other part of the field, we're coming up on the anniversary of, obviously, of the battle, July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. To tie it into Pickett's Charge right here, that's the reason that they marched those Virginians out there in the middle of that field at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's why it doesn't make sense, ladies and gentlemen. That's why a lot of the Virginians are puking before the attack begins, because they got heat stroke and so forth. Because the Virginians weren't, Pickett's men weren't supposed to be out there that long. They were supposed to attack at 10 o'clock. Now what I can't tell you is why it doesn't take place. The attack, Pickett's Charge does not take place till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, at least the bombardment. You know, the assault is a little after 2 probably. Why did that not? I mean, that's not the course of Welcome to History. That is not what we're focusing on today, but it ties into what the story I'm about to tell you right now, because Stewart's brigade is going to be attacking, and Johnson's division and the rest of them, and they're attacking alone. Big picture, does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so how do you align an attack? The Confederates, as I've already described to you, I won't go into great detail, are basically following the contours of this hill around the edges of Spangler Springs. They've even got some reinforcements. Smith's brigade over on the left, a little bit of that are in position. So anyway, Stewart needs to make an attack. And this is one of the hardest maneuvers probably ever performed by a unit on a Civil War battlefield. Stewart is going to order his men, going back to the beginning of this tour to tie it all in for you, he is going to order his men from facing this way and this way and this way to basically swinging out at right angles and facing this way. 3rd North Carolina is going to swing out first. That's going to be the right unit right there, and the rest of the brigade will then promptly align upon them. That alignment is basically that tree line you see right there. And right out here you got Pardee Field, P-A-R-D-E-E. This is going to be one of the few clearings around here. This is going to be the clearing they're looking to advance through. So finally they can probably get some momentum. The thing that is often overlooked, y'all walk right over here. Y'all need to take a step anyway. Y'all get too hungry. On the right side of the wall, 5 companies on the left. 23rd Virginia came next, possibly 50 men, maybe less, followed by the 37th Virginia and maybe a portion of the 1st Virginia. The 10th North Carolina was positioned facing toward the side, I guess you'd say the flank, and toward the rear to keep those Yankees off of them. Right there. Okay, here come the Virginians. Out through the woods. Do you remember what do you remember what John Adams said about Virginia? John Adams, the dude from the special. No? You don't remember what he said about Virginia?
He said, beware of a two-party political system.
Beware of a two-party. I thought that was Washington. John Adams said, every Virginia goose thinks it's a swan.
That's pretty good stuff.
That is good stuff. I mean, nobody, you people are too tired for this tour. The Virginians are going to come out of that wood line right there. All right, and as they come out of this wood line, even though you're facing the wrong way right now, there you go. The Virginians come out of this wood line right here, and what are they facing? These Union boys, some of them are in the ravine, but some of them are up there on that knoll. Now do you see, ladies and gentlemen, look behind you. Look at where we came from. Look at where the Union boys are. The traverse, which I referred to earlier, is right behind this group of woods right here. Now do you see how the Union, I hope this is making better sense at the end of the tour. The Virginians, 23rd, 37th, are going to come out of the wood line, and they're basically going to be caught in a crossfire. Or as that Marylander said, it's a slaughter pen. As they come across the field, and as Lisa starts to go to sleep back there, thank you very much. As they start to come across this field right here, they're not going to get too far. Why? Because if CJ is crossing this field right here, you got Yankees shooting at him from here, you got Yankees shooting at him from here, and shooting at him from here. The Marylanders who are attacking along this stone wall don't like that. And I put this in here for you for the mysterious red shirt man. One final quote. I actually did that this morning because I knew you would like it. Howard wrote that they came forward. Stewart, standing on the right of his line near his beloved Marylanders, shouted, "Attention! Forward! Double quick! March!" The brigade started off with arms at right shoulder shift. Daniel's brigade tried to follow suit on their right. The brigade crossed the field about 200 yards in length. The 5th Ohio and 147th Pennsylvania, numbering 600 men, stood there waiting. Kane's brigade extended the Union line to their right towards Spangler Lane. The Yankees allowed Stewart's men to approach closer. Why would they let them approach close before firing? More lethal. They get within 50 yards, and then they opened. Quote, "The death rends the air on every side," recalled a Marylander. "The chaos of combat reigned. There seemed to be no commander, or his orders were not forwarded." In the open, on the left and center, they seemed to melt away under the fire, and some Marylanders contended that the Virginians on the left failed to advance, even with their officers pleading. Now this is a Marylander writing this. "But never," wrote Goldsborough, I wish I could write like this, wrote Goldsborough, "shall I forget the expressions of contempt on the faces of the men on the left companies of the 2nd Maryland, as they cast a side glance upon their comrades who proved recreant in this supreme moment." Recreant. The next time you get angry at your spouse, You will turn to him or her and you will say, try not to be recreant in this supreme moment and mow the lawn. You do not wish to be recreant. Virginians don't get that far, is what I'm saying to you. But look at the terrain, ladies and gentlemen. Look at the terrain. Virginians are over here. They're a lot more open. North Carolinians and the Marylanders, though, look, this is what the battlefield teaches you. Look right back here. The terrain right here is more sheltered. I don't know how to put it into words, but you cannot see the Confederates as early as you can see the Confederates on the other side of the field. Does that make sense? And so that's the reason I think, in part, and they're good troops, the North Carolinians and the Marylanders are going to be able to advance further than the Virginians. We're going to about face. We're going to go right over here. Let me put them in the shade, unless you got something for here.
No, we can go to the shade.
All right, we'll go to the shade, and then the mysterious red shirt man would like to speak again.
This is at the dedication of the Maryland monument up the hill there. It's amazing. All right, and some of the men that Matt's talking about that were here that day are also in this photograph.
Somebody would just say, hey Bert, you think you
And,
have a round off with a flag?
yeah, they remember what happened here. Matt said, you know, the Marylanders wrote about this. And they're going to talk about Company A's here in their woods, and Captain Murray, he's killed here. And Company C is over here in these woods. Company D in formation is coming on the other side of the fence. Beyond them is the color company, and P.E. Moore is shot down, loses the colors for the regiment. Over here on this side is his cousin. His cousin's the color bearer for the 1st Maryland Eastern Shore on the hill. All right? Coming across the field is Major Lay. He's one of Stewart's aides. He's mounted on horseback. They think he's a general. If he makes it to the wall, they shoot him down. They're going to bury him up in the ravine. In front of the regiment here, and we've got their advanced position, but they're actually a little bit further because some of them make it to the wall, and their mascot, Gracie, if the story is right, makes it over the wall, comes back, and then is shot. General Kane tries to tell his troops not to fire, but the dog's shot anyway. He will bury Gracie in the ravine, we believe, with full honors, as the most human being creature on the field that morning. And that's what happens to the Marylanders. Back to Matt.
It's like a commercial, right? Like you turn back around and like, you're there. Okay, somebody's probably sitting on it by now. Okay. 1st Maryland, 2nd Maryland, whichever you want to call them. Let's finish this up. They start advancing across the, through here. Marylanders coming down this way. North Carolinians coming down this way. The 29th Pennsylvania is going to open up fire roughly within point blank range too. Within 50 or 100 yards they open up. Basically when they come over the crest of this hill, right? And so when the 29th opens up, one of the Union officers notes, this is pretty cool when you can find out these tidbits, but one of the Union officers noted as these Confederates were advancing that the leaves were raining down on top of the Confederates' heads. What does that tell that Union officer? They're shooting too high. And so what they need to do is lower the musket because they're shooting into the trees. What are you doing? You're nervous, you know? Maybe your first fire, maybe something like that. Maybe you got some chickens or something like that, and you just got a wolf out there or something. You don't like that. None of this makes any sense to you. But if you think about it, the 29th lowers their guns, and the officers wrote shortly thereafter that their fire, I thought I had a quote for that, was noticeable at once. Maryland Stewart and other miscellaneous officers continued to cheer the boys onward. Sergeant Thomas from Maryland thought they should charge, but the officers told the men to stay steady. Nevertheless, the Confederates continued the advance within 60 yards before finally halting. Kane, the Union general, recalled the Confederates advancing with arms at right shoulder shift, steadily dressing their ranks, if you can imagine that, as the losses mounted. The attacking line began to waver, and then a mad dash by the survivors forward toward the Union line only to be shot down within paces of the front. If you could part like the Red Sea, and you can see, what does that say?
Point reached by 1st Maryland Battalion, CSA, July 3rd, 1863.
Point reached by the Marylanders on July 3rd, 1863. One of the few Confederate monuments you could argue, although it's up to interpretation, that is within Union lines. The advance marker for the Union line, Confederate advance, what do you think? 60 yards? Right there, give or take a few. Now, as we conclude the program, I am left with the sad task of telling you a story that will not lift your heart. Glasses back up.
Shady outside.
What are you doing over there? In the midst of all this chaos, one of the strangest sights of the Battle of Gettysburg occurred when a dog dashed out in front of the line into no man's land. He came in among the boys in blue as if he supposed they were what in better days they might have been, merely the men of another noisy hose or engine company, competing for precedence with his masters in the smoke of a burning building. At first, some of my men said he barked in valorous glee, but I myself first saw him on 3 legs between our men and the men in gray on the ground, as though looking for a dead master or seeking on which side he might find an explanation of the tragedy he witnessed. Intelligibly to this canine apprehension, he licked someone's hand, they said, and afterwards he was perfectly riddled. So he went out there. The stories, they got all the story correct. He finds whoever his master was out on the field, and then he is filled full of bullets. General Kane from the Union Army ordered the dog Barry, quote, as the only Christian-minded being on either side. Does the red shirt man have anything to add to that story? No. All right. Okay, in this era, the Marylanders were the first to break. The red shirt man will not like that fact. They have been chewed to pieces. To their left, 3rd North Carolina, or the right, the 3rd North Carolina was all that was left making the assault. Without support, they began to fall back. Back on top of this hill, roughly where that Confederate monument is, Maryland Stewart was distraught. He was wringing his hands while saying to no one, but everybody, my poor boys, my poor boys. His tears streamed down his eyes, you know, because he sat up there on that knoll and watched it and just get slaughtered. Out in front, you remember Private Howard, the Marylander. He lay wounded in the thigh, which had broken his leg, and another ball, if you could add insult to injury, hit him while he was laying there. While laying there, Howard could differentiate between the ball striking the rocks and the ball striking the bodies around him, because they made 2 distinct sounds as they struck the bodies. He had the impression that the Yankees were firing intentionally at the wounded men around him, which I could believe. No, I'm just kidding. Whether that is true or not, I don't know. Anticipating a mortal wound, Howard stretched himself out on the ground and folded his arms over so he would make a good-looking corpse. He doesn't die. And after a while, the firing starts dying down. And he opens his eyes up, and the Union soldiers, he's somewhere in here, the Union soldiers are beckoning the Confederates to come on and surrender. Howard started to crawl toward the Union lines until 2 Union soldiers dashed out, grabbed both of his arms, and pulled him into their lines. He said his broken leg, quote, swaying from side to side every step they took. Inside Union lines, his captors peppered him with questions about the identity of his unit, his motive for fighting, and then inquired if he knew who he was fighting his own men. What does he mean? What do they mean by that? They're fighting fellow Marylanders. And Howard responded, yes, and we intend to fight them. Now this is something, this is probably, if not the darkest story I ever tell on this battlefield. One of the darkest right here. Right up the line, I figure this will be, it might be a Louisianan and it might be a North Carolinian, but the 147th New York is going to be right up, roughly where that car is parked up there, all right? And to the right. So take away, go back to that ravine where we started the tour. You better not run up on them Harley riders up there, I guarantee you. They're going to have something to say to him. And his 50 cc's. 147 Pennsylvania, is up there. Yeah, 147 Pennsylvania. And they're fighting it out. And as the smoke clears, they're watching. And what's in front of them. And this Confederate soldier is out there in front. And the guy writes that the Confederate soldier was writhing in pain, and the soldier started to reach for his musket. And the Union soldiers thought that he was going to shoot them. And so they started firing. If you can imagine this drama, they started firing shots. Not intentionally, but not intentionally to hit him. They were shooting around him, you know, kind of like the Old West, you know, or something, trying to hit over his head and around him and so forth. And the soldier just methodically, that old Reb just methodically takes up his rifle. And as they continue to plunk at him, he systematically goes through the loading in 9 times while he's laying there. And as he loads the weapon, the Union soldiers are shouting at him not to fire. Don't you fire, because they think they're going to shoot one of them right there. And instead, as he rams the cartridge home, which had to take a bit of effort if he's wounded through the abdomen right there, which he was, maybe even partly paralyzed, he rams that round home, he gets it seated, and he doesn't return the rammer. He takes that musket, he primes it, he puts a percussion cap on it, and as he's laying there, he positions the musket, and as these Union soldiers are shouting at him to stop, he takes that musket right there and he positions it, and he takes that ramrod and pushes the trigger down and blows his head off right in front of him, right there.
Thanks, man.
Thanks. No, yeah. He pushed the trigger down. They eventually went out there and looked him over, and he had been shot through the abdomen. And so what was he thinking? He was in pain, number one, but what's he thinking? Dying anyway. Think you'd have the courage for that? Right there. In conclusion, Johnson's division has made a valiant assault against daunting odds and come up short. His division of 6,433 men has lost 30%. That's 1,936 men. 373 killed, 1,150 wounded, and 413 captured. Stewart's brigade's losses mirror those of the division. Out of 2,121 men, he lost 725 in this assault, or 34%. Now notice how the casualties increase from left to right. The 23rd Virginia, out of 251 men, is going to lose 14%. 37th Virginia, out of 264 men, will lose 20%. 10th Virginia, who has 2 days of good fighting, is going to lose 28% of 276. But when you get to the right flank of the brigade over here, 1st Maryland Battalion has 400 men. They're going to lose 47%. 1st North Carolina is going to have 377 men. They're going to lose 40%. 3rd North Carolina is going to have 548 men, and they're going to lose 218, or 39.8% coming across. So it all depends on where you are on the battlefield. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, how much time am I over here? About 3 days over? Who said that? I said it. Who is the person that just signed their own death warrant? But you ever watch Full Metal Jacket, you know that was a tame reenactment of that right there. I'm thirsty too, buddy. Right here. Maryland Stewart's Brigade comes up here, and in one of the greatest opportunities of the Battle of Gettysburg, they come this close to capturing the Union line, or rolling it up, if you will. It's one of those things, ladies and gentlemen, where a little luck here and maybe a little less hard fighting on the Union side may have led to greater success for the Confederates. But if there was ever a unit or two units that met each other, it has to be the New Yorkers that were over here. It has to be the New Yorkers that were over here. Thank you. No, don't go over there. He's not your friend anymore. It has to be the New Yorkers that opposed them, okay? Because, my gosh, David Ireland, does anybody ever need their due given to them? Joshua Chamberlain's obviously gotten his. But David Ireland, retreating from that hill to that traverse, the subsequent Ohioans, the Pennsylvanians, the New Yorkers that came up from there, and the tenacity which they held this line. Maryland Stewart's men just could not crack the line. And the formal position, George Greene's force site to entrench, all leads to Union victory up here. Culp's Hill, to me personally, is the hardest part of the battlefield to understand. It intimidates me, to be quite honest with you. When I drive up through here, I don't like that there's more monuments than I know on either side of the road. I don't get it. For several days of fighting, and fighting overlaps each other, and the units overlap each other. It's completely confusing. And that's why I think, in part, is what I'm saying is why a lot of people don't come over here, too. I hope that this tour has led to a little bit better understanding. I definitely needed a refresher myself. For those of you that are going to be here for the next few days, I do not envy you in your hotel price, to say the least. But I hope tomorrow you'll come out, especially for the morning. We're going to have 120 reenactors out at stop number 1 for Chris Gwynn's walk. I believe it's the 147th New York, right out there. And on, there's too many to list. But on July 3rd, we're going to cross the field with Joe Davis's brigade. So without further ado, I need to go back to the office and write something down on Davis's brigade, because I have been recreant in this matter. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate it. Not before DQ.
Are they strange people we find in the woods over here?
Yes, the strange people we find in the